All right, this is the module for leadership development. We entitled this module Precision Filtering. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to have everybody get a sheet of paper and make it horizontal. I'm sorry, landscape. And you want to write precision filtering and just put leadership development. How's that? All right. So the first thing we're going to do, so we're going to do the sheet this way, and we're going to make a triangle right over here. Just make an upside down triangle, sorry. And do it just like that. And then you want to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just kind of 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, 6. Sorry, 6. All right. And so what we want to do here is we are going to just put size of groups Jesus interacted. Interacted. All right. Is that fair? And so we see several size groups that Jesus interacted. Obviously, the biggest one was the 4,000 and 5,000 when he fed them. Actually, it's probably more in the neighborhood of 15 to 20,000 when you throw kids and women and all that in there. And then the next layer we see multitudes. Those words are used, multitudes and crowds. Oh, by the way, if someone pushes, where is this in Scripture? Well, this is Mark chapter 5. Multitudes and crowds show up in Mark chapter 4, Matthew chapter 13, these words. And then we get the 120, which we find at the beginning of Acts. There's 120 people praying. And then the other number we get is a 72. And those are the 72 or 70, depending on your translation, that are sent out in Luke chapter 10. And of course, we get the 12 we found in Mark 3 when the 12 disciples, apostles. And then the last one, we get the three. And we see that really very clearly in the Mount of Transfiguration when he takes Peter, James, and John up there. So we see this paring down in terms of groups that Jesus deals with. Now I'm going to create another triangle. I'm going to put this one like this, and this triangle represents um, time spent with these groups. And so the best we can tell, Jesus spent the least amount of time with the largest groups, and he spent his greatest amount of time with the smallest number of people. So we see an inverse relationship. The larger the group, the least amount of time he spent with them. The smaller the team, he spent a tremendous amount of time with. Now, here is the question you want to throw back to the group. What do you think Jesus used to filter down to the three? So you're going to throw that question back, and they can write it on their sheet of paper, throw that question back to the tables and have them discuss this for a few minutes. And it's just to kind of get a feel of what kind of you got, what kind of biblical knowledge you have in the room. So how did Jesus filter down to these really 12 and 3, this group of 12 and 3? What did he do? How did he figure that out? Is there any clues in scripture to determine how he did that? So give them I don't know, maybe 4 minutes to discuss that, maybe less if you don't hear much talking or something like that. All right. And then you can put a dotted line right through the middle here, right, like this. And then at the top here, I want you to write, what did Jesus use to filter? So just a little tip here, if this helps you any. As they're discussing this, you're writing this on the other side of the piece of paper. So gives you a few minutes to get ahead of them. And so the real question is what did Jesus actually use to filter? And so we're going to actually look at some scriptures here, and then you can put number one, John chapter 6, verse 52 through 67. And then just put this and then put a line out there. Put number two, Matthew. And we're going to list several examples of filters. Matthew chapter 4, verse 19 through 22. And then 3 is Luke chapter 9, verse 57 through 62. And make that a little bit bigger because there's going to be a few that might show up in this one. And then number 4 is Mark chapter 10, verses 17 through 22. All right. And then right there, Mark. And then another one, Mark 8. I should have put that in order, but you get the picture. Mark 8, 34 and 35. And then 6 is Matthew chapter 13, verses 9 through 17. All right. And then just put a line underneath that, just like that. All right. So what you can do is you're going to throw that back to the tables, and they're going to read through, and then they're going to say, what was the filter? All right. And so if it helps any, you might want to read through the first one. So you read through the first one, John chapter 6, verse 52 through 67. And that's where Jesus tells his disciples to drink his blood and eat his body. And everyone just was like, what was that? And they scatter. And one of them says, well, we're going to stick around with you. And so I'm going to call this what just a hard saying. I mean, a hard saying or a confusing saying. I mean, like, what is he talking about? Right. So that's a hard saying. All right. So you might just model that for them. So they go, oh, okay. And then let the teams do two or the tables do 2 through 6. And that should take, again, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or so. Just kind of get a feel for the group when they stop talking. So, all right. You come back 10 minutes later. And so Matthew chapter 4, verses 19 through 22, that's where he actually calls them. They are fishing with their family or their father. That should be 19. And he says, come follow me. And they drop their nets and they follow him. And so you can call this, most people just say that they obey. There's obedience. I would take it one step later, farther, and it's radical obedience or rapid, maybe. Some call it rapid or radical obedience. So either way, it's obedience. It seems crazy at the time, or it's rapid. So, and then in Luke chapter 9 through 57, I'm not going to read all these 57. This is where these three guys come to him and they say, hey, we want to follow you. And Jesus says, oh, you won't have a place to sleep. And someone says, oh, I want to go back and say bye to my family. He says, no. Oh, I want to go back and bury and he just says some crazy things. But I think one of the filters is a loss of comfort. You're not gonna have a place to sleep, possibly. I mean, it's gonna be uncomfortable. And then it's really hard to put this in any other way. It's just um, family family ties, um, or something to that effect. You're gonna allow the groups to kind of fill this in. And then Mark chapter 10, verses 17 through 21. That's where the rich young ruler and he's like, man, I want to follow you and I want to get saved and Jesus tells them to sell everything. So I'm just going to say attachment to stuff or something or money. I don't know. Money might be the barrier. And then this one is one of my favorite, Mark chapter 8, verse 34 to 35. This is where he calls the crowd together and his disciples, and he says, anyone that wants to follow me must take up the cross and die. But this is actually interesting. So we're going to put death. There's a death to something in your life, and that could be all kinds of things. But what we see in this one is he actually said you got to die for the gospel. There's some type of death for the gospel. And that's huge. There's some, and by the way, this one actually covers all of them. You're taking up your cross in all these. It's just a real blanket one. And then the last one is Matthew 13 to 9 through 17. And this is where Jesus is talking to them. This the kingdom parables. And everyone scatters. You don't really get this in Matthew, but they say, hey, why are you talking to people in parables? And Jesus is like, let me tell you why. So he actually uses parables um, or just veiled teaching. And he's seeing who comes up after the fact and ask him about him to figure out. This one is actually, I use this in the trainings all the time. I just see who comes up after the training and asks me, hey, I want to learn more about that. My point is Jesus intentionally put something over the bow they wouldn't understand. Same thing with this, just to see who's going to stick around. It's crazy. It's not what we typically use, but, and then, so this is, and by the way, there's more. We just kept it to six. I could add another four or five that just crazy things Jesus said about hating mother and father, and which would go into family ties and stuff. But you get the picture. Jesus had filters. And so here's the $1 million question. That was not the million, but next most likely question you want to discuss at your tables. What are your filters for your leaders or who you will spend time with on an intentional basis? Does that make sense? So at the tables, so this is a table time, right? Table time, and then lastly, table time, and see what they say. Um, and then you'd come back, and you come back and go, okay, what are some of the filters? Some of the things you want to be looking for, will they go in the harvest, right? Um, will they share the gospel, right? Will they train others? Will they start a 3/3 group? They start reading their Bible. I mean, memorizing scripture. I don't know. Will they make adjustments in their calendar, right? Will they? It's just some simple. There's just simple things you can put out and see how they respond. And so we'll have fun with this one. But there you go. Precision filtering.